welcome to our first summit of the National Black Professional Lobbyists Association. I've watched two of the panels and it has been absolutely amazing. So at this time, we have another panel, one that is near and dear to my heart, and that is municipal representation at state capitals. In my practice, I'm Yolanda Cash Jackson. I don't think I said that. I represent a lot of local governments, and all politics is certainly local. And we have with us today, moderating this panel, Kelvin Dasher, who's the Director of Government Affairs for the City of Birmingham. Kelvin, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I am at the edge of my seat waiting for what this panel has to say.
Well, I got lucky today. I mean, everything's been great so far, but I got an all-star panel joining me today of amazing and really a diverse group of national leaders who can bring a great perspective on engaging at the state level and delivering for local clients. I'm excited about it. I'd love to talk about it, but I think I'll let them do it each. First up, someone who kind of emerged as a leader during some of his city's most recent difficult times, the president of the Baltimore City Council, the council president, Nick Mosby. Good morning, Councilor, Mr. President.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited about today's panel discussion.
Good. Hey, man, give us the 45 to 60 seconds overview on who you are.
All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you to the organization. My name is Nick Mosby. I'm currently the president of the Baltimore City Council. Quick background, I was a state rep in Maryland for 4 terms in Annapolis. And prior to that, I was on the city council for 5 years. So my life in politics has been for the past decade. My background is in electrical engineering. I know a lot about the state of Alabama. I'm a graduate of Tuskegee University, born and raised here in the city of Baltimore. Absolutely love our city. I love my city. The one thing I'll say is to folks that are listening out there, I know many of us come from areas with challenges prior to the current pandemic. But we also understand and know that there's tremendous opportunities. And those opportunities literally rest on our shoulders as it relates to the next generation and how we kind of craft our policy and how we develop different initiatives to provide better trajectories for the folks that are coming behind us. So excited for the panel, excited to talk today.
Thank you so much. There's a city not too far from Birmingham that has really made a mark for itself. And I'll let the person who's leading that city talk about her city and what she's been able to accomplish. Deanna Holiday Ingram is the mayor of East Point, Georgia. Good morning, Mrs. Mayor.
Good morning. How are you doing? Thank you so much for the invitation, the opportunity to be with you today. I'm Deanna Holiday Ingram, mayor of the great city of East Point, where there's no point like East Point. I had the honor of
I like that.
That's my tagline. I'm sticking with it. Honor of being the mayor. I'm going into my 4th year, my first term. And so prior to becoming mayor, I was a council member. So I'm 7 years in elected service in the city of East Point. We are 2 MARTA stops away from Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, the world's busiest airport. Across the street, literally, in some portions of our city from the city of Atlanta, really nestled right in the metro Atlanta area, and have a lot of assets and amenities in the city, which is why I say there's no point like East Point. We're a model city for equity, justice, and inclusion. And so I want people to think of that when they hear there's no point like East Point. And I also want people to say, why does she say that? And I say, come check us out and see. We are a diverse community of about 35,000 residents, 76% African-American, 16% white, about 10% Hispanic, a significant LGBTQ plus population, as well as seniors. So a multicultural, multi-generational city that has a lot to offer. And we're not only diverse in our residents and demographics, but also in our housing stock. And literally, we have from 500 square foot housing to 7,000 square foot housing. So really, we are trying to ensure that we continue to make sure that housing is affordable for everyone regardless of their income level. So I'm excited to be here today and be a part of this amazing panel. Thanks for the opportunity again.
Madam Mayor, I see you're also the Chief Marketing Officer for your great city.
I try to be.
I gotta stop by. We'll start. We have a few more folks who are going to join us as we go through our panel. But let's start with Mr. President. If you will, you have the very unique perspective of serving both at the state and the local level. About that challenge of having to balance, kind of as a state official, right? Having to balance the overall needs of the state versus having to deliver for your district, and how you engage with those elected officials within your district.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because particularly for, a place like Baltimore that sits in a state like Maryland, my city is so unique in comparison to the rest of the state. So for a representative body, it's really challenging to kind of develop the empathy for some of the issues that we face, because it's so different than what the rest of the state face. I mean, we have like Western Maryland. I mean, Maryland is a unique place because it literally sits like right in the middle, right at the Mason-Dixon line. So to the east, we have the water. To the west, we have all the mountains. To the south of us, we have DC, and to the north of us, we have the Big Apple, right? So, Maryland is literally a microcosm almost of kind of the Northeast region. And with that, Baltimore City is so unique to the state of Maryland. So I'm literally working with fishermen on the East Coast to folks with farms on the west side of the state, and really talking about the issues of Baltimore City. When we talk about food insecurity, housing insecurity, we have the oldest educational portfolio, meaning buildings in the entire state. We have the oldest infrastructure in the entire state. So when we go to the state for some of these concerns and these questions, is really trying to develop ways for folks to understand and know the needs of the city of Baltimore. The one thing that has always been effective is right outside of DC, there's another predominantly African-American county in Prince George's County. And typically in Maryland politics, I just throw it out there, there's always like this huge divide or line. I can remember growing up, people say, "You from Maryland?" I say, "No, I'm from Baltimore," right? And I guess people in Prince George's County, sometimes they'll claim DC. So there's always been this chasm. And I think that's literally symbolic of some of the issues that we face in our community, of us not collectively working together. 2 years ago, while I was in the state, there was a bill that literally pit both jurisdictions against kind of one another. And I was happy to work through that process, and before the end of session, getting everybody on the same page. That was really beneficial for the citizens of Baltimore. So again, it's a very difficult type of relationship, but I think the key word of it is like really building those relationships. People in Annapolis call me the Baltimore guy. So they always knew that I was going to walk around and as it relates to the interests of Baltimore, that's what I was going to represent 110% of the times. So they always understood and knew that no matter where I was coming from, it was from a good place of just really speaking up for my constituents. Kelvin, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
We've only been doing video conferences for 9 or 10 months. You think I get the hang of it? I'll be good by the end of the pandemic. Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Mayor, you're in a different and probably very difficult position. Where you are, I mean, you're outside of one of the largest cities, really the largest city in the Southeast. You have been able to kind of really separate yourself from some of your neighbors in terms of landing some really strong economic development opportunities. But how do you elevate your voice with all the clamor, with Atlanta, at the state capitol? How do you elevate the voice of your folks and make sure your needs are conveyed, to the state capitol?
Yeah, it's definitely, as Council President indicated, relationships, right? Making sure that we're maintaining relationships with our state representatives and senators represent our city. But more so than those relationships as well, making sure that we are reaching out to them to help us, get the enforcement and the accountability and the resources and the grants we need at the local level to be able to make things happen. You know, being a city that is a majority city of color, oftentimes, you know, when resources are on the table, I don't necessarily think we often pop to the forefront. I mean, we're not always top of mind, especially like with transportation infrastructure, those critical needs that impact the quality of life of our residents day to day. And so it's really about relationships, networking, and influence, right? Using a lot of things we don't do by authority is by influence, and being able to influence and have those relationships to be able to bring those resources to our community. Again, communities that are often not at the forefront, but making sure that we make enough noise that they realize we're here. We need the support and services. And as Yolanda Cash Jackson mentioned, politics is local. At the end of the day, whether or not people, when you turn on your water, if water comes out, if when you flip your light switch, if the light switch comes on, you know, whether or not we dial 911, if somebody's showing up, that's all local. And it impacts the day-to-day life of our residents, and, you know, really trying to make sure that we have those strong relationships to be able to deliver on not only the promises, but the services that they are entitled to and deserve.
We're going to be joined in just a few minutes by the Honorable Eric Ulrich of the New York City Council. So he'll bring another dynamic kind of perspective to us that we're very excited. Mr. Council, are you with us?
Hi there. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you? Will you introduce yourself to us, please?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, it's great to be with everybody. I'm sorry I'm just a little late. It's kind of a hectic day. My name is Eric Ulrich. I'm a member of the New York City Council representing a very diverse, wonderful district in South Queens. And I think most of your participants and members have probably flown into Kennedy Airport, one or at one time or another, and that is just outside my district, but I represent a lot of the communities surrounding the airport. And it's great to be with everybody. Unfortunately, we can't be together in person because of COVID, but you know, I'm still getting used to the Zoom way of doing business, even on the legislative side. But I think this is really great. I want to thank Tiffany Raspberry for connecting us. I think it's great that you can find ways to connect and support one another and share best practices, and also grow as an organization. So it's really just, it's great to be with you. I'm happy to see smiling faces, healthy people, and in any way that I can be helpful, I want to do that. So we can get started whenever you like, sir.
We'll tag you in right away, because we have seen it play out, particularly with the pandemic, the interaction, particularly in New York, because your governor's played such a high profile role in the pandemic response. And but there's been some rub city, state with New York, as there is, you know, in lots of places. How do you all break through, kind of, you know, in Albany? How do you ensure that, you know, of course, the elephant in the room in New York State is always New York City, but at the same time, it's a big state. And how do you make sure that the needs of your constituents really kind of rise through some of the noise that's out there?
So I think that's a great segue. To say that there's friction between Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo would be an understatement, right? They had a very rocky relationship before the pandemic, and the pandemic has only brought to light a lot of the issues that the two personalities seem to be having. You know, in New York, it's a unitary system. The cities are creatures of the state, and the governor is the chief executive. And we've seen throughout this pandemic a lot of contradicting between the two. And it's very confusing when we're trying to get information out to our constituents. Are schools going to be open? Are they not going to be open? Who makes that decision, even when there's mayoral control? Are restaurants going to be allowed to open at 25% or 50%? What zone is the city in as compared to Nassau County or Westchester County or other counties? What are the metrics that we're using? I think it would be a lot easier if the metrics and the process itself was a lot more transparent. And that doesn't seem to be the case, because with closed restaurants at 3.8% infection rate, but now we're talking about reopening them when they're at 8.1%, because I think the governor's afraid of what happened in California happening in New York. People are getting restless. People are getting frustrated. The business community, which in New York City in particular is predominantly, if not MWBE, it's immigrant owned and run, especially I'm talking about the small business community. And this particular constituency, through the Restaurant Association, the Chambers of Commerce, they're getting more and more frustrated with the administration, with the city and state administration. And how do we work with them? I think that the mistake that the state and the city made was we didn't properly engage them early on in the process to explain to them, how things would close and how they could reopen, and what responsibility and what role they played in that whole process. And then also, I think there was a rush to stop the spread. And certainly we know how devastating it was, especially to communities of color and poorer parts of the city where they don't have access to healthcare and the type of protective equipment that other parts of the city had. But when we rushed to close everything down, we really didn't provide any clarity or direction as to how we would reopen everything. And then also how we would assist those businesses and those nonprofits. Nonprofits are also business. They provide wonderful services for our communities, but they also employ lots of people. The PPP program was great while it lasted, but it didn't last very long. And then that was an opportunity for the city and the state to step up to the plate and say, we're here to help, and this is how we're going to help you. The pandemic also taught us a lot about the inequalities in the system itself. And when it's a system, I'm talking about the structure of government. Okay, when we have people, the decision makers themselves are not always. I'm trying to be politically correct here. They are not always.
Man, just friends here. We can let it all out.
Yeah, like you basically had two old white guys telling everybody else, how we should stop the spread of the disease, how we should keep businesses open, how we should make sure that landlords stay afloat, how nonprofits don't go out of business. And they had very little to no interaction with the leaders and the local elected officials, the clergy and the faith-based folks, the nonprofit CEOs, the real stakeholders that make our neighborhoods tick and keep them moving forward. There was very little engagement with them whatsoever, and that was very frustrating. We had a lawsuit it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and we won when they closed churches in New York State. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. It was the Diocese of Brooklyn, and they closed churches, which was a lifeline for so many people. They were following all the guidelines in terms of capacity and how to cut face coverings and not distributing communion or any, ashes or anything like that. And we won, but then Cuomo said, well, that was an old policy. I banned that anyway. It was very hard to justify to constituents that your church or your mosque or your synagogue is closed, but Walmart is open and Target is open, and all these big box stores are open, but the little mom and pop shops, your barber shop is closed. The liquor stores were open. Thank God for that. I mean, I don't know what outside of this, but my point is that it was very hard because we closed churches, we closed small businesses, we provided little to no relief, little to no communication. People see the mayor at 10 a.m. saying one thing, and at 12 noon, the governor was saying the complete opposite. And it was very, very hard to deal with the constituents who, were just saying like, hey, am I sending my kid to school tomorrow? Is my husband or wife going to work tomorrow? What is the train going to be running in the morning? Like, there was no information out there, and the lack of information and also the lack of communication with local stakeholders. They have to realize, God forbid there's another pandemic or something as serious as COVID, that this has to be a process that is organic, holistic, and from the bottom up, not the top down. It will never work out. We're seeing this now with the distribution, first with testing, what a disaster that was, and now with the distribution of the vaccine. And there's a lack of information. Don't tell me that they don't know what zip codes are getting the vaccine more than the others. Like, and by the way, the person who's going to help us get the vaccine in communities of color or in immigrant communities in particular are the faith leaders, are the nonprofit, are the people that those residents trust. It's not going to be me or the governor or the mayor or some Dr. Fauci or somebody else. Like, that's important. That's good. But how are you going to get the needle in the arm for people that desperately need it in communities where they're being ravaged by this pandemic? You have to involve the local stakeholders, and they haven't done that.
So, Council President, let's talk about your perspective a little bit, because when I get to Madam Mayor, Birmingham, Mayor Woodfin calls Birmingham kind of a blueberry in a pot of tomato soup, right? And so, that's a different thing. Madam Mayor, your state has begun to change a little bit. So, with the most recent elections, but Mr. President, you were at the State House, right? And so you were carrying those local concerns there. The city of Birmingham is very important that we have lobbyists who are very effective and engaged all the time. What was that engagement like with you when you were a state representative and lobbyists and representatives of various municipal areas around the state? And how were you able to connect if Baltimore had representation at the state level?
Well, I mean, it's a word that I used earlier. It's really about relationships, right? And building those relationships. The one thing I constantly talk about, and this is true as like elected official, is like, how do you cultivate a relationship?
Right.
Well, you can't cultivate it when it's a time of crisis or like when you really need me, because it's not really there based off the relationship. You're there because you need X, Y, and Z, right?
Yes, sir.
So particularly, like if I'm like talking to a lobbyist, because I know that, that's what we're here to do. It's really about, identifying the elected officials who maybe share some similarities, maybe have the personality to like, try to connect with, but most importantly are effective. Our state house is a body of 141 members. Now, I'm not going to say, what percentage wasn't effective or who's not and who is, right? But at the end of the day, you take a body of 141 of whatever, some people are going to be way more effective than and others aren't, right? So it's really about like, who are the folks that are getting stuff done, that have like very interest into the things that you care about and that are like core to whatever your work function is, and meet them, get to know them, build relationships with them. Don't just reach out to them when you need something particular, but reach out to them to just, again, grow that relationship. And there can be creative ways of like cultivating that relationship. So sometimes as a lobbyist, you might have information that you assume I know, but I might not know. Maybe it's something that's not even really germane to a topic that you're kind of following, but you think it's really important for, say, like me, the city of Baltimore, or things like that. Develop creative ways of kind of developing that connection and then also cultivating that relationship.
Mary Ingram? Same.
I say it's really about delivering, right? So in small cities, we have scarce resources, right? Our budgets, we have a decent sized budget in the city of East Point, but it's not like larger cities. If it is something that we are going to expend resources on, and right now we have a solicitation open for state and federal lobbyists. So I'm kind of limited in what I can definitely say, but I can tell you it's about delivering. Right. We are a member of Georgia Municipal Association and National League of Cities, and they do lobbying at the state and federal level. So we're going to bring an additional consultant on board, or, people on board to do this work. We got to get the outcomes. Like, I got to get money to the city of East Point, different grant, like you have to be able to produce, right? It's not just having a relationship and saying, I know 1,000,001 people.
Right.
But is that going to help East Point? Right. What is it? What's in it for me? What's in it for my people? And is that going to yield some net gains in our city to be able to help us serve our residents? And so it is really about delivering. Of course, having relationships and networks and knowing people is critical, but if those don't translate into actual deliverables, it's a
Yes,
challenge
ma'am.
for us. You know, I got to go back and do a cost benefit analysis, and if it costs more than what was brought in, like, I mean, it's kind of like a no-brainer, right? So, you know, and being a city that is majority people of color, our needs are different, right? The issues might be the same, but what we need and the nuances and really being able to advocate in that way is something that I think is a niche as well. I've seen Yolanda Cash Jackson do it time and time again. I see Rufus Montgomery on here as well. Thanks for the invite. But you know, it is really knowing the city and being able to, you know, do your homework. I had somebody like basically insult us and come to a meeting and say, so now we're going to get to know you guys. And I'm like, my bio's on the website. Like, I don't have time for that. But, you know, so know who you're serving and who you want to serve and make sure you can deliver.
Well, I mean, Mr. President, we got another great guest joining us, but I'm going to say this, and I hope you don't take it wrong. My wife tells me all the time that women are a lot more bottom line than we are sometimes. As Madam Mayor said just then, you got to deliver.
I would try to spin it a little differently. I was approaching the question from they already have the relationship or contract with, say, the city.
Sure.
But
Yes,
now
sir.
they're going to a legislative body and trying to, you know, deliver on those results, right? I wasn't going from the standpoint of like how we even initiate the relationship with the city. I mean, you wouldn't be in the room. You wouldn't be part of the discussion unless you were somebody that was going to be able to deliver. So,
sure.
But I totally agree with Madam Mayor. She was right.
Oh, yeah, she laid it out for us. And I mean, because but that conversation with my wife was, I'm like, you know, this is really looking like the decade of the woman elected official, right? And so with Madam Mayor there from Georgia, we have, you know, the first woman vice president, and now we have just a couple of months in the office from Miami-Dade County, the first female mayor down in the beautiful that beautiful city in South Florida, Mayor Daniela Levine Cava. Madam Mayor, good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Yolanda Cash Jackson for thinking to include me. I'm sorry I'm running behind, but all this Madam Mayor talk, you know, like, oh, there are other Madam Mayors. I'm so excited.
Hi, friend.
Sorority girlfriend. Okay.
We're going to get elbowed out here very quickly, Mr. President. But
no, I like what you said, the decade, because I keep saying it's the year of the women, but you know, it just keeps going on, getting better.
Well, my wife said it's the century, so I think, you know.
Okay. Well, listen, it took us a century to even get talked about, so I think we need a century to catch up.
Will you give us the 30-second version about yourself, and then I have a question specifically for you.
Sure. Well, I've lived in Miami for 40 years. My husband grew up here, but I did not. And I'm from New York and Atlanta. Hey, East Point Mayor. And I worked for Urban Corps, Atlanta Urban Corps. I did, and placed interns all around in progressive settings in the Atlanta area. And I'm a lawyer and a social worker by training. You know, it took me 10 years to fall in love with this place, but now like I'm in. And so I worked in the nonprofit sector. I ran the courts program for children, the foster care system. I started a nonprofit now called Catalyst Miami that is a real rock this world kind of organization that works on giving people voice and helping to improve standard of living both. And then I ran for office 6 years ago. Yolanda Cash Jackson was actually on my board of Catalyst Miami. Yes, shout out to Yolanda. Who, you know, taught me so many things, and decided to, you know, I was outside government, always pushing it to do the right thing by the community. And my legal services background was representing especially poor people, but people trying to get education, proper education for their children, and other equity issues. And then it was time to go inside government and, you know, have an appetite for people that want to participate, because I was training people up to be active, and you know, government wasn't listening, so I had to go inside, change that dynamic. So 6 years as a county commissioner, and I was just elected in November to be the first woman mayor of Miami-Dade County.
Shattering the glass ceiling there.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. No, so you just delivered, I understand, your state of the county address.
Yes, this morning.
And so Florida is such a weird place, right? I mean, all the regions are very different. They have very competing needs. The panhandle is very different from where
Sure.
you are. The I-95 corridor. I mean, it's how does, I guess your budget's probably about $9 billion.
That is what it is, sir. How did you know? 9 billion, and we have almost 3 million people.
I am that kind of a nerd. But when you have to go to the state capitol, when you have to Tallahassee and kind of ensure that the urban needs are reflected just as much as kind of the panhandle needs in the other parts, what's your strategy? How do you get through the clamor everywhere else?
Yeah. I mean, it's really amazing because our positions are nonpartisan, but I am a lifelong Democrat, and the legislature is dominated by the Republican Party, and makes it really hard to move forward. So you have to find points of agreement that transcend party. You have to find that win-win-win, or like I like to say, quoting Reverend Jim Wallace of Sojourners, that to get to common ground, you have to go to higher ground. So what can we all agree with? Well, apparently now we can all agree that the economy needs to recover from the pandemic. So, I'm very amazed to see that our governor is very proud to take all the federal dollars he can to plug the state budget. So no more talk about, oh, let's not take federal tax dollars. No. We're going to take it. And Medicaid, we want them to expand Medicaid. They won't do it. But guess what? Federal dollars are plugging the hole in the Medicaid budget because more people have applied to Medicaid. So, you just have to find that point of common understanding. Like, we were not allowed to talk about climate change when Rick Scott was governor, but this governor does talk about it. And he's got a plan around climate change and money to deal with infrastructure. Why? Because we're seeing flooding in the streets, right? And storms, these incredible storms. So I think, unfortunately, it takes a little while. People have to see things with their eyes. Like, fish died in Biscayne Bay, thousands of them. And so now we all want to accelerate good environmental practices to keep our natural environment safe. So I guess I try to do those things. I try to find the practical things that people can relate to and not get bogged down in the ideological side of it.
Mr. President, your role is probably, it's again different, not to use the same word all the time, but because you have to align the members of the city council, then you got to coordinate with the mayor, and then you got to go to the state house. How do you finagle all those separate interests, competing interests, to come up with a unified agenda for the city of Baltimore?
I mean, it's definitely a challenge, particularly during these times when there's so much to tackle. Again, when we talk about when we talk about food insecurity, housing insecurity, education, the digital divide, mass transit, I mean, you name it, it's been, heightened and magnified significant with the impacts of coronavirus. So I think particularly for a city like Baltimore, it's really important for people to kind of understand and know their roles and their responsibilities. I know, the core competency and function of my job is to develop legislation that's going to support and better the needs of the citizens of Baltimore through the statute that we have control over. I know at the end of the day, my mayor is the person that speaks for the city. So I think it's really important, particularly in these times, that there is no miscommunication or no ability for folks to kind of talk about the city of Baltimore is divided. I mean, let's be clear, this is the first time where, you have the top three citywide elected officials of a major American city that all are young African-American men. So there's always this narrative that wants to be painted as if we're not on the same page. And that's just something that I'm not willing to kind of participate. So as it relates to the message in Annapolis, is literally working with the mayor's office of government relations, leveraging my network from my experience in Annapolis, to help support those initiatives while having my individual focus on kind of the initiatives here on the city council. So far, that's worked out well. Now, we've only been in session for a couple of weeks now, right, as it relates to our state side. But, I've already had the chance of carrying a couple bills down and really pushing for the city of Baltimore. But I would just say, again, from an executive and legislative branch perspective, it's really just about working together, particularly when we're in a time of crisis and there's so many issues that need to be addressed.
Mayor Ingram, right now we know that the previous presidential administration really relied on state governments to get out the vaccine, and a lot of municipalities are having trouble even figuring out kind of how they can plug in. I think that's a practical application of developing a relationship, the local relationship at the state level. Do you want to talk about a little bit, maybe that particular item or any other specific issue area that you need to break through in at the state level?
So, the challenge really with the vaccine is the previous administration's failure to ensure that there was an adequate supply, right? So the challenge has been in Georgia, the state is determining who gets the vaccines and who's able to distribute it. For us, Fulton County is distributing the vaccinations, but they're getting less than 3,000 vaccines per week for a county that has over 1 million residents, right? So the supply shortage is, clearly like an understatement. What we have done, though, understanding that it's from the state level, is still going to be like through the Board of Health within your county. We've made known, and through our relationships, like at the county level, like another level of government, right? The county commissioners of the different facilities that we have available in our city when there is the need or when expansion of distribution sites actually takes place. I'm excited and optimistic by President Biden, really having a plan. Go figure. It's been a whole year and we haven't had a plan. Now we have one. And the fact that he is, really ordering more doses of the vaccine. I think next week we should have about 1.4 million is what they're targeting to try to get that out throughout the country. So that makes me hopeful that the amount of supply vaccination will increase. I can tell you the demand and people who are willing to be vaccinated in the city at East Point is high. We get a lot of emails about, because you have to call a number or go to a website. People 65 and older aren't really on the computer.
Right.
There are people who are helping them with the website, or they call the number they can't get through. So there's a lot of logistics issues that we are saying, look, we're here, we're ready, we're able to help. And hopefully we will have a distribution site locally in our city through the county and in partnership with the state. So, it is being ready, willing, and able since day one, right? People through this. And you have to say, hey, we're ready. We had to build these buildings. So when you're thinking about your list, remember us as being ready and making your voice heard, right? Standing up and saying, hey, don't forget about us.
Mayor Kava, I'd like to ask you the same question. Is that kind of one of your priorities in terms of engaging with the state right now, that vaccine access? And is there another one that initiative as well, or issue as well, that, that you got to, get the state folks like, hey, Miami-Dade, check us out. The vaccine, is there something else as well? And what's your strategy?
Right. Well, for sure, this vaccine dominates my waking and sleeping little that there is brain. It is such a challenge. Clearly, we did not have a national plan. Each state is on their own. In our case, the governor, he made some good decisions and he made some decisions that I disagreed with. For example, we're not allowed to have local control over some of the protections having to do with the virus. But having said that, we do have orders, we are enforcing them. We have a high positivity rate, but we've kept it steady even through the holidays, which, Miami is a big tourist destination, even in a pandemic. So we were very nervous, and there was a lot of behavior that exposed people to risk. So anyway, we've got one of the highest rates of infection. We have a high percentage of those over 65 and at great risk. And our governor prioritized people over 65, which not all states did. I don't know about Georgia. So I think it was a good choice, even though it left behind, which wasn't good, some essential workers. So it was really only the frontline healthcare workers and those over 65, and hospitals could prioritize those with special health conditions. But after the first few weeks, hospitals were not getting any vaccine. So we've been getting we have in Miami-Dade County almost 3 million people, about 500,000 over 65, and we've been getting 22,000 doses a week. We've vaccinated over 150,000 people so far, but some of those are people that have come in from other places. And vaccine tourism was also alive and well, which has been tamped down on to say you have to live in Florida. But unfortunately, that may lead to fear for the people who might not have an immigration status that they feel comfortable, talking about themselves. It may lead to further failure to take vaccines. So we're working through those issues, and we just need more vaccine. I mean, just like Mayor Ingram said, we have people lined up, desperate. Older people can't get through on the computer or on the phone. And it's just been mayhem with the state really dictating how the vaccine goes. So I've tried to get in front of it. I've established a good working relationship with the head of emergency management for the state, who's been distributing the vaccine with the governor's orders. But it has been really, really hard to have the county play the leadership role that we need to play. We are in a state of emergency. I'm the incident commander. I need to know where is this vaccine, who is getting it, how it's being distributed. And so we did create an executive order last week to require anybody with vaccine to report to us. But most of the vaccine is going through state sites, and I can't really effectively order them to participate.
But Mr. President, as much as COVID-19 is dominating kind of every day, every minute of every day, there's still some basic issues that were already on your plate well before the pandemic hit. We questioned about infrastructure and roads and bridges. You mentioned education and some of the other issues that you're facing. How do you make sure that even as you work with the state to address COVID-19, that your other remaining issues that were here before the pandemic, that are going to be here after the pandemic, how do you make sure that those things remain, relevant and get the attention they deserve?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think some of the first things that I attempted to do, I've been in office as president, resigned from my state rep job in December, since December the 10th. I mean, some of the things I attempted to do was just to ensure that we were right size as a council, as a legislative body, really trying to drive augmentation of the professionalism in the office, bringing in certain subject matter expertise. But my background is as an electrical engineer. So I constantly tell folks all the time, like, this will be a council that will develop legislative solutions, not based off emotion, but based off of data and evidence-based solutions, right? And
data,
I think that
science, whoa.
I tell people all the time, I mean, I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage, but as an engineer, that's just the way my brain is kind of wrapped. And a lot of times, particularly in local government, in places like Baltimore, I'll just be real, with the issues that we've kind of had for a long time, policy has always kind of been shaped through the emotions of that particular time with that particular issue, as opposed to developing strategic plans that's not just looking for today and tomorrow, but looking up 5, 10, 15, 20 years, identifying what all those issues are, what's the long pole in the tent, what's the low hanging fruit, and how we prioritize them to get it done. So really trying to develop that mindset, again, by utilizing data to try to understand, where should we be going first. Excited, we rolled out our first legislative package about 2 weeks ago. It was specifically related to COVID. But we're looking at some of the loopholes and some of the issues that our residents were having as renters and as homeowners. Something else that we were able to look at through data is the increase of delivery apps, right? And the amount of money that they were making, but more importantly, taking away from our small and local businesses. So, you know, you had apps that were literally charging restaurants over 30% of that particular order. You order something for $20, the restaurant's only getting $14, and the delivery app is getting the $6 plus, you know, additional fees. We're going to be looking at local hiring next. So again, you know, trying to identify what the issues are, but then utilizing the data to help come up with the solutions.
How does East Point compete for the attention of the folks, you know, at the Georgia State Administration to ensure that you get your fair share of looks from an economic development perspective when you're competing to land those big projects?
You know, it's our location is a huge asset for us, right? So it's kind of like we're already in the game, even if we don't know it. There have been a number of projects that the State Development Department has brought in. Pops Displays relocated their headquarters from New York down to the city of East Point, and that was orchestrated through the state. We also had a recent Home Depot project that the State Economic Development Department took the lead on and brought to the city. Our being 2 MARTA stops from the airport, literally straight down the street from the airport in a certain area, which is a huge like business park, industrial hub area for logistics. I think that is what really kind of sets us apart and keeps us on the mind of people, along with the entertainment industry and the filming that's happening. Like we're a film ready city and have had a lot of like notable films here in the city. And so when people are looking to, you know, do those types of projects and then they come here and film and then they're like, oh, there is no point like East Point, right? And then they start doing other projects and development in the city. And so I think that's what helps position us in those spaces. Once we bring on a state lobbyist and a federal lobbyist as well, those things should help. Again, with deliverables, believe it or not, there are people who we've engaged who didn't necessarily deliver before, right? And so, you know, I think it's having all of the tools available. We have a number of development tools available, like we have development authorities that are within the city, outside of the county. We, you know, own our own water and also electric, and so we're able to put incentives together to be able to attract those businesses as well. And then we do expect community benefits, though, you know, for businesses and development that are coming in to make sure we have people who want to not only build buildings but build community, and we're really advocating for that. And so, you know, being a part of or being on the mind of the State Economic Development Office and being a location that I believe that they market quite often in addition with us definitely helps us.
Mayor Kava, I know that Miami-Dade County is an amazing economic engine in the state of Florida. How do you make sure you get your share fair back in terms of what you generate to the state? How do you make sure those dollars flow back down south to Miami-Dade?
Yeah, I think we are a donor county. And I guess part of what I have been trying to do for years is make them appreciate us. Okay, it's one thing to give us our fair share. Another is to just recognize that we are a key driver. And if they don't take care of us, you know, it's only going to hurt the rest of the state. So we just want a little love, right? South Florida. But yeah, I think it is a challenge. We've had a number of leaders coming out of Miami-Dade County to the state legislature, but they have really oftentimes worked in a more divisive way than unifying way for our local needs. So I've been working with the current day delegation. We have a wonderful chair of the delegation, Ana Maria Rodriguez, who comes out of the healthcare industry. I've known her for many years. Her vice chair is Dottie Joseph, who's a Haitian American state representative, and you know, one of the first. And so they, I think, are, and by the way, 2 ladies, and I think that they're going to be more attuned to helping us build momentum for a unified force. If we work together, that delegation is so large, and work across party lines, we can deliver, but we have to get everybody on the same page. And so, for example, our water and sewer system is a key priority. The I mentioned before the pollution in our bay, which is our economy is, excuse me, our environment is our economy. So if we have water that's impure and you can't fish and recreate and enjoy clean beaches, then, you know, we're nowhere. So I think that they've made it a priority, just like our local county commission has. So I'm hopeful, again, very practical, something that affects all of us, that will be able to bring the bacon home. We call it, yeah, we're going to bring home, I don't know, the tofu. We're going to bring home the bacon to Miami-Dade County.
Mr. President, in terms of Baltimore, not versus, but balanced against the state of Maryland, kind of, I went to college in Gettysburg, not far away. And so I used to go down to DC. We pop into Baltimore all the time. So we saw the geography of the state, right? It's very different. Like Baltimore's really urban, but a lot of states really not. So how do you make sure that, you know, you have a lot of, you know, you have the Democrat, Republican, you have some black, white. You also have that urban rural that you're dealing with. How does that play out with you, and how do you manage that at state level?
Well, the unique thing about Annapolis and Maryland, traditionally, it's like supermajority for Democrats. Proportionally, we have the largest Black caucus in the entire country. So the base is there to like move things that are consistent with the issues and conditions of places like Baltimore City. I think over time, it just becomes difficult, particularly when you're in the midst of a global pandemic where the residual effect on the economy is affecting everyone. So no longer in Annapolis is like Baltimore, you know, talking about how our bottom line is affected, and we have like these structural issues that we have to battle through, and we're asking for our colleagues to support us here and there. Because the richest county, be it Howard County or Montgomery County, they're going to the state legislature and saying that they're struggling as well. So I think that that's where like the creativity of like really trying to drive the empathy around certain conditions and certain problems are key, but then also coalition building. I hate this, I'm not going to speak for the mayor, but I'll say I'm pretty sure one of her strategies is trying to identify like-sized cities that have similar problems for them to collectively kind of go in and push, you know, her elected officials at the state level there. So again, that I would say that is the biggest challenge for places like Baltimore City right now in the midst of COVID.
Did you deal with a lot of local lobbyists, municipal lobbyists when you were in the State House, Mr. President?
Yeah, so, you know, of course, it's the collection of group, MACO is the Maryland form of it. Then depending on the size of the county, will depend on if they have like their own shop. So of course, Baltimore City has its own shop, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, that are literally there working the issue of that particular county. But then you have some of the smaller ones that just really don't. It's a challenge for them to elevate their issues. That's why it's critical that smaller places elect mayors like Mayor Ingram, right? Who, you know, already comes with like the energy, the knowledge, the connectivity to ensure that their issues are at the top of the fold as well.
Well, Madam Mayor, I think he was introducing you there.
Hey, I have to take him on the road with me. Like,
Hey, I'm gonna always shout out Black Girl Magic.
hey, I appreciate that. That feels so good. It feels so good. So, yeah, you know, we have our South Fulton Municipal Association. So, cities south of Atlanta, there's about 8 of us, and the largest one is 100,000, and the east one is the second, which is about 35,000. And so we do, you know, meet and talk about the issues in our area and how do we leverage, right, our populations to be able to, you know, position ourselves for opportunity from a regional perspective, and from funding, right? You know, to make sure we get our fair share of funding. The lack of investment in infrastructure in, you know, cities like ours, in counties or portions of counties that, you know, are predominantly people of color is just mind-boggling. And it's, when you look at the data and you follow the money, it's just like, so we couldn't even get a penny of that. $100 million to one district, and we couldn't get a penny. Like, so it really becomes power in number, right? And how do you really build a coalition of sorts to be able to bring it home for your residents. And that is a challenge. It is a day-to-day struggle, right? But being a Florida A&M University alum and
Rattlers.
having attended Howard University for law, I've learned how to work hard, play hard, and build workarounds, right? And Mayor Kava, I wanted to mention, my first job after clerking was at Legal Aid Service in Broward County. So a major connection there.
Little hashtag HBC love as well. I see you there.
Hashtag.
Kava, you've been in office, what, 60 days, maybe? I mean, a short time, right? What is the structure? Yes, ma'am. What is your structure like, Mayor Kava? Do you have government internal lobbyists and external folks contracted as well?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question, but let me just say, if I don't know what the timeline here is, but I'm going to have to get off after this question because
yes, ma'am.
Meeting.
Thank you for your time thus far.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. So, my sister and brother, another mother. Let's stay in touch. So, first of all, it's different in Miami-Dade County from the rest of the state because it is a strong mayor with a home rule charter, and so I'm elected at large. In other counties, the mayor is elected by the colleagues on the commission. We have 13 single member district commissioners. I was one of them for 6 years. And those commissioners the commission is responsible for policy. As the strong mayor, I'm the executive mayor. I am the manager as well as the mayor. So all administration reports through me. And then the commission passes the policy. Of course, I try to get them to see my view on the policy. So we're working that through. And we had term limits as of like a term ago. And so those have kicked in, and now we have 6 new out of the 13 commissioners. So it's been a major, major transition since November, a real sea change. And then I don't recall, but we have lots of lobbyists. Yes, we have a lobby corps. And for the county, we do not have restrictions as to people who do business with the county and whether they can contribute to campaigns. So there is a lot of what some people would call revolving door, and that is a real problem. I did try to enact some reforms that require greater reporting, at least, but under Citizens United, it is very hard to really limit. So we do have a very active lobby corps, and they do a good job. But they do add time and money to the process.
Thank you. I know you need to jump off and hope to get down. My wife is a Disney fanatic, and so we're down in that area. But I'll make sure we head on down a little further south to Miami.
All right. Very good. And thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Great to know you. Bye-bye.
We'll hang on just a few more minutes with Mr. President and East Point's own. Mr. President, before we leave here, talk to us about selecting that lobbyist. How, because you're dual-sided there, bro. I mean, you've seen both sides of it. What should municipalities look for when they're looking for somebody to represent them?
Well, I'm going to listen to Madam Mayor, like she said earlier. It's about results, right? So I'm not going to, I ain't putting nothing out there without saying that before she says, what is this dude talking about? No, you got to answer to like your residents, your constituents. And, typically the things that you're pushing for through a legislative body are going to align with the priorities and your messaging as it relates to you communicating your effectiveness in that particular position. So you're going to have to try to identify who you think is going to be the right person at the right time to kind of deliver that message in an effective way that drives results, Madam Mayor. But also in saying that, kind of getting back to my point earlier around like relationships, but then also it's about selecting the right person at the right time, because sometimes, and I know the lobbyist community is not going to want to hear this, but sometimes lobbyists have way too much to do. They already have so many other clients, so many other initiatives. So you want to ensure that your particular thing is a priority to them as well. right? So sometimes it's not necessarily going like with the number one flashy name. It's really going with that person that you know is going to be dedicated to whatever needs you have at that particular time. And I think that is kind of advice for a lobbyist, someone who's not necessarily connected to a large firm or does not have like a large client base, but really working and scrapping to get that one quality kind of contract that you can invest your time and literally, build your reputation off of.
So before we move on to Mayor D, this organization that's hosting us today, first of all, thank y'all for being here, and big ups to the folks who put this together. African Americans are often eased out of these opportunities to serve as lobbyists and representatives in many places. In Maryland, was that the case? Was there active and growing opportunities for African Americans to serve in these roles?
So actually, there's one on. He texted me while I was on. Lorenzo Bellamy is out there. He does a lot of like social justice work. Has a couple major clients. But I would say, yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, again, I think that this industry is a microcosm of like what we're dealing with right now in America. I think more importantly, I'm gonna speak from the hat of a legislator. It's also up to us as Black officials of understanding, knowing like, we're dealing with these corporations, we're dealing with these advocates, we're dealing with these special interest groups, but are they also diversified in their own approach? I mean, many people I meet with, I don't care who you are, I'm gonna say, well, how does your board look? How does your corporate structure look? How many folks do you employ in this particular area? But also it means a lot to me when I'm communicating and engaging with someone that kind of understands and has some cultural awareness of the issues that are affecting my particular city. So right. I think that it's a challenge in Maryland, like it's a challenge everywhere. And I think collectively it's important for everybody to kind of understand their role in it. I see my role as a lawmaker as playing into that as well. So again, Lorenzo calls me up. I'm going to quickly take his call because I know the challenge that Lorenzo's having on a daily basis, just even working in this environment that was never intended for Lorenzo to succeed anyway. Again, when we talk to our Black Caucus, when we talk to other members of our body, I think it's really important that we kind of continue to spread that message. Why is 5%, 10% of the lobbyists that we interact with on a daily basis those of color? But as African Americans, we represent 33% of the state. We have the largest, again, Black caucus in the entire country proportionally. So again, I think it's a problem, and I think it's ownership of all of us to collectively, fight against that issue.
Madam Mayor, you have sold us all today on East Point. We're all converts, so you've done your job there. Talk. As we begin to wrap up today, talk about, all the things you're doing to sell your city and the important role y'all play to the state to make sure the state invests in you, back in you.
Yeah, so I think it's really positioning ourselves and making sure that internally we have the tools and are able to even deliver. I talk about delivering a lot. And so I appreciate the balance of this panel. And council president having been a former state representative and now local elected, they can talk about it from that perspective. Being a smaller city, I harp on delivering a lot again because our resources are scarce. And if this is something we're going to do, we have to be able to see the benefit from that. And so, it's really, we're doing what we need to do internally. We're working, almost finalizing our equitable growth and inclusion plan, so that we can grow in a way that respects and honors our legacy residents and businesses and allow them to be here and thrive with the new people who come in, right? We want others to come. So you do have a personal invitation from the mayor to come check us out. But, it's really our communities, we can no longer like just make it be the norm that we have to grow in a way. And gentrification is the only way for us, right? That requires some things at the state level that will make it more equitable for people to be able to stay in their communities, to stay in their homes. And I would think that, people who are, of the same culture or, have experiences, are culturally aware, understand that and can bring that to the table and bring that to the state with us. to be able to elevate our voice, elevate our issues, and more importantly, elevate the needs of our people so that we can bring those resources back. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share. Thank you to Rufus Montgomery for the invite. One of my sheroes and mentors, Yolanda Cash Jackson. And this has been an amazing panel. Council President, again, I need to take you on the road with me, but I've learned a lot from being on this panel and serving, and really appreciate the opportunity.
Mr. President and Madam Mayor, I cannot thank y'all enough for your time and, more importantly, your expertise and your insight over the last hour. I'm very grateful that the folks have considered the concept of the National Black Professional Lobbyists Association and bringing us together and connecting us virtually. I've been pushing hard already to try to get the first in-person convention in Birmingham, Alabama. And bro, you come on down to the Magic City Classic.
We want y'all to come on up. Come to Baltimore.
So how about this? Birmingham.
I knew better.
Birmingham, Baltimore, then East Point. How about
Hey.
At least that's the first three. That's going to be the first 3 in-person ones.
I'm just saying.
I appreciate y'all so much. Day 2, of course, is tomorrow morning, starting at 9:30 Central of the summit. They're going to talk about making money moves in 2021. I think all of us want to be a part of that. But again, Mayor Deanna Holiday Ingram, thank you so much. Man, that enthusiasm is contagious. Mr. President, congratulations on your rise and the things that you're doing in a very important city at a very important time. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll wrap us here for our lunchtime. And I hope I got the email addresses and phone numbers of the folks who are here, because this is the next generation of leadership, and this is where you find them at the National Black Professional Lobbyists Association. So thanks so much. And I guess I'm saying goodbye, and have a great day. Thank you all.